you like my hat? Darling, come on, give up your drugs. The drama is just unnecessary nonsense, and in theory I agree with you, but in reality I fucking love it. As far as climbs to the top of the heavyweight roster go, Tom Aspinalls has been very British. Despite a 100% finishing rate, a total of 14 minutes in the Octagon with only one of his fights making it to the second round, the shortest average fight time in UFC heavyweight history, the highest striking differential, the second best strikes landed per minute, the second best submission average per 15 minutes, the third best knockdown average per 15 minutes in the division, and no time spent in bottom position. He slipped under the radar for a lot longer than his skills and performance really warranted. Then, in what was a giant, literally, step up in competition for the youngster, he faced Alexander Volkov in the main event of the first promotional card in Europe for 3 years. Big deal. And if that doesn't get the attention of fight fans, a seemingly easy first round submission of a heavyweight veteran on what was an immense night of fights certainly will. Hello, Tom Aspinall. And his performance was so impressive that he got himself that second date. A callback to headline again at the next UFC London event that's coming up this very fucking weekend. The same arena, the same coveted spot, the same home crowd, sort of, to hopefully do the same to Curtis Blaydes. And that's what Tom wanted. Like, he was originally after Tuivasa, but really what mattered to him was performing in front of the UK fans. He says, I want to be the UK guy. I don't want to go on a random card now and just be another name on the card. I want to be the UK darling. Darling. Blaydes, though. He's no old dude being put out to pasture. Currently riding a 2-fight win streak, Blaydes will be looking to put the brakes on Tom's slow meander towards the belt. But Blaydes' record isn't anywhere near as shiny as Aspinall's. Of that streak, one was a spectacular knockout, and one was a very lackluster decision. Before that, he was brutally KO'd by Derek Lewis, and his other promotional loss has come at the hands of the division's champ. But alongside these losses, he has a host of wins against real big names: Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, Alexei Oleinik. And he says his skills have really come on leaps and bounds recently. We all know Blaydes can wrestle. We all know how you girls like to tussle.
Don't fight me, because I know how you girls like to tussle.
He went 44-0 as a high school wrestler, 19-2 as a freshman, won a national title at Harper College, and then went on to pursue MMA. But now he says he's a much more complete fighter. He says he's built out his boxing, his kickboxing, his ground game. And despite all these skills he's bragging about, you can't stop him. He believes his biggest advantage comes in his cardio because he trains at altitude. And, you know, there is still a question mark over whether Tom has a good pair of lungs on him. But what Tom definitely doesn't have, if you listen to the loudest voice in the room, is star quality. That voice, of course, we've spoken about him before, we'll speak about him again despite my best efforts, I'm sure, is Chael Sonnen. And now, with just this one minor exchange, we have been gifted the fight that we all want to see, I assume. I do. Chael Sonnen, Tom motherfucking Aspinall. Of course, Chael Sonnen fought at middleweight, but he was happy to fight at light heavyweight. So, in my imagination land, this dream completely made up fight, they could meet in the middle. And yes, Sonnen is old, and his fibres are probably turning to dust. His skin is probably made of chewing gum. His spine is probably one just fused stick of Blackpool rock. But, seeing as we're just using our imaginations, Who do you think would have won if they faced one another each in their prime? Tom is just this new breed of martial artist, the next evolution of heavyweight. Volkov had had over 40 professional fights when they faced one another. He'd only been finished 3 times in his entire career. Tom Aspinall went out there and made it look easy. He beat him in every aspect of mixed martial art. He was too fast, his boxing was crisp, and his movement is always incredible for a man of that size. The takedowns were blended in seamlessly. The ground and pound was clinical. I don't know about you, but my doctor does that to me all the time. It's very frustrating. And he finished him off with a straight armbar. Aspinall fights like he weighs 145, but with the power of a heavyweight, you know what I mean? But of course, 14 minutes in the Octagon, we can't know everything there is to know about Tom. And we'll come back to that. We don't really know if this jack of all trades has the skill set to really come out on top against a master of one. And that one being the constant cry heard around the fucking world, a wrestler. And Chael was a master of wrestling in his day. He was tough, he was fearless, he never took a step backwards. His mouth got him more fights than his skills really deserved. But we never missed those fights, did we? And when he fought Silva, he was winning that fight. He caught Anderson with some vicious shots, he was landing takedowns nearly every round. He broke his fucking rib, but submissions were always Chael's weakness. A weakness that you can't have around Aspinall. And he got caught in a 5th round triangle choke against Silva. And then of course there were the illegal substances. So if we take those away from him, come on, give up your drugs and put him against Aspinall, he probably doesn't stand any kind of chance. But in a war of words, old man Chael would definitely come out on top, eh? If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're a real one who's probably here just purely for the fights and feels as though the drama is just unnecessary nonsense, and in theory I agree with you, but in reality I fucking love it. I'm going to do my best to tempt you with some morsels of prime beef. Chael Sonnen has a big mouth, like we all know that, right? And he keeps coming out and telling people the same old story, that if they are respectable, lovely, delicious human beings, that they really should try being a bit more of a dickhead. Talked about it in the Valentina video.
3, 2, 1.
And we're gonna have to talk about it again because he really, for a short window of time there, had it out for Aspinall. He said Tom needs to do a better job of promoting himself. So far so tame, as far as Chael's opinions go. But he went on to say that he was so disgusted watching one of Tom's interviews that he had to turn it off. And isn't that kind of your job to watch those things, Chael? I don't know. Maybe you don't care about doing research before vomiting your poison into the atmosphere. Apparently, what really made Chael sick to his stomach is that Tom was saying really lovely things about Francis Ngannou. How dare he? And then apparently he went on to big up some of his other competition as well. The gall, the gumption. Chael's bonnet has a real big B in it, and that B is Tom buzzing around being just a nice guy. He said he comes across like a 13-year-old fan, not a high-level fighter, and that Chael can't put him back in a main event. Didn't realise that was anything to do with you, mate. But luckily, the UFC can. Sonnen suggested that Tom even be pulled aside and coached by his team to give better interviews, going as far as to say that his manager should even speak for him. Why don't you just start a heel consultancy, Chael? Just turn everyone into different versions of you, and I'll jump off of my balcony. Aspinall quickly responded, and it doesn't look like he'll be turning heel anytime soon. He's happy with who he is, and he doesn't see the need to act like a clown for views. But to show Chael that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and Tom would never skin a cat, he didn't downplay his skills. In fact, he rarely does. He just gives the rest of the roster the props they deserve, and I think that's smart. I get that for some people it's part of the game to get into their opponent's head and make them doubt their own skills so that they don't perform on the night. But isn't it an equally as effective marketing plan to make the world aware of just how good your opponent is, so that when you beat them, it's all the more impressive? Like, if you just beat someone that 5 minutes ago you were saying as a joke, joke's on you, really, isn't it? And it's even fucking worse if you lose. One size does not fit all when it comes to competitive mentality. Aspinall forgoes all of the peacocking that we see from superstars like Conor and Joanna. He just tells it how it is. For some fighters, their preparation includes like intense visualization of an infallible run with absolutely no chance of ever being beaten, and it works for them. But Tom, on the other hand, understands the dangers in front of him, and that understanding forces him to prepare better. But that fear also helps him to unleash the beast, so to speak.
Such a good guy, but all these feelings inside been taking me for a ride. I need somewhere to hide. I've been talking to God. I need someone to guide. Oh well, but I tried.
Tom called himself one of the greatest heavyweights to walk this earth, one of the most feared punchers. But he also says he wants to prove it. He doesn't want to get to the top by shooting his mouth off. He wants to use his skills to earn his spot. He wants his statements to be reflected in his body of work. And his next step to achieving this is his most challenging opponent stylistically in Blades. But Tom believes that these scary fights are what unveil the best version of him. He says he needs the fear because that's what brings out the crazy stuff, the dangerous moves, the next level skills. He doesn't want to feel comfortable accepting a fight. He wants to feel scared, and every time he overcomes that fear, his confidence grows. Don't let his humble demeanour or slow plod towards contention fool you. He knows what he can do. He believes in his abilities, and he knows he's doing all the right things to get to where he wants to be eventually. But when it comes to training your mindset and your self-efficacy, you need to figure out what works for you. Steadfast and infallible, or flexible, agile, terrified. There's no right answer. We know Tom has power in his hands. He's a former training partner of Tyson Fury. Loves going for knockouts way more than submissions, which makes his fights really exciting to watch and usually ends in him breaking his hands. But his dad is a long-time BJJ practitioner and coach, so you better believe he can bring those submissions too. And he says that he will take a submission over 5 rounds any day. Of course, the Blades fight has some crossover with my imaginary dream Sonnen fight. The critics are about to get what they've been crying out for. The wrestler Tesla. I think that Tom is well-rounded. I think he's grown up as a full, skilled MMA fighter, not a singular specialist. And that's what we're seeing more and more in this modern evolution of MMA. But we're only seeing it come through drip by drip, whereas Tom, for now at least, seems to be ahead of the pack. And maybe part of this new breed is this quieter, more understated personality, an introspective warrior. And what would that do for the overall entertainment value of the sport? Tom wants to keep his best weapons as a secret for as long as he can. He doesn't want to show the world and his future opponents everything that he can do, because then they'll know what to expect, what to train for, and how to possibly beat him. But he is about to show us one more weapon, wrestling defense, and I can't wait to see what he can do. So if Tom does get this next win, what do you think is next for the rising star? How soon do you think he will fight for that belt? Don't say a title shot next, because he said time and time again that he does not want it. He's young, even though he's got like the soul and calm of a man 3 times his age. He's in no rush. He doesn't want to get thrust into title contention, and potentially, if he's there sooner than he should be, lose that fight and lose the opportunity to fight when he is ready, or really have to work extra hard to get back into that spot, kind of like Blades. Obviously, Ngannou sits at the top of this division, a feared knockout artist with next level power and an evolving game which blew our minds last time we saw him fight. A force to be reckoned with, or not if you want to keep some brain cells. And Blades has already fought him twice and he lost both times. Even if he gets an incredible win over Aspinall, I don't know, the best he can probably hope for is the loser of Gane Tuivasa? Aspinall has spoken about his utter respect for Stipe Miocic and how he'd like to fight him soon. But Stipe seems to be holding out for John Jones, although Dana has now said that Jones is ready and it's the opponent that's the issue. And with Tai and Cyril already set for UFC Paris, and Nganou's out until at least the end of the year, the top of the division is becoming a little bit of a bottleneck, which will work in Tom's favour if he really doesn't want to fight for that title anytime soon. He still wants to gain experience though, so he's not exactly going to sit it out and wait for that bottleneck to clear. I want to see that Tai Tuivasa fight for sure, but that's only going to happen if Tai loses to Gane, because the winner of that fight probably is next for the title. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Blades could cause the upset in London and cost the UK a darling. But to be honest, if you ask me who the UK darling is, it's Mohammed Mokaev, and I won't hear anything about it. If you do want to hear more about it, I'll link last week's video for you where I was talking about the fights I'm most excited to see on the UFC London card, and I'll even link my Mohammed Mokaev video for you so you can catch up on all things Punisher before he scores another immense win this very weekend. Like, subscribe, come hang out with me on Instagram and let me know in the comments what's getting you most excited for this next evolution of the golden age of British MMA. There, I said it.